Hello, innovators. I'm Todd Wyant, and welcome to the Bridging the Gap podcast sponsored by Applied Software. You're invited to join our MEP and Construction Innovation Adventure with a mission to propel this great industry forward. My guest today is Samir Merchant. He is the head of product for Autodesk Construction Solutions, and he leads the product development and delivery efforts for Autodesk site construction and pre-construction product portfolio, which includes BIM 360 and PlanGrid. I'm excited to talk to him about all the new and exciting product offerings Autodesk rolled out during Autodesk University. Welcome to the show, Samir.
Thank you, Todd. Good to be here, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were just putting the pieces together beforehand of another fellow Atlanta guy,
Right.
tech grad. So very exciting. Always fun to talk to an Atlantan.
Always fun.
So before we get into all the AU stuff, how'd you get into the construction industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've been a technologist for over 20 years, since I graduated from Georgia Tech. And I've done, a number of different things along the journey, ranging from security systems to advertising systems to consumer tech. But one of the things that has always sort of drawn me is we as technologists, seem to love solving problems that are a little bit glamorous, right? And many times when you look at industries like construction, you don't often hear about the technology that goes on behind making an industry like construction really hum. And for a large part, when we ask why that is, the answer we get is, that industry is not really adopting technology. And to me, as a technologist, it's always been the other way around, which is we as technologists have not been able to create just the right value proposition and the right tools that allows the industry to embrace technology. We see everyone in that industry use cell phones like everyone else, right? They consume mobile devices and everything on mobile devices, whether it's social media or games or entertainment or productivity applications, just like everybody else. So if you have the right value proposition, people are going to embrace your solution. And so to me, it was always a challenge as to why, some of these industries that are lagging behind in terms of adopting technology, why have we as technologists not been able to crack that nut? And that's when, through that sort of, analysis, that's when I came across this company called PlanGrid. And, through some mutual connections, got to know Tracy Young, who was the founder and CEO of PlanGrid. And one thing led to another, and, as this conversation progressed, I knew that Tracy had the vision to really change and really bring technology to the forefront for this industry and really build tools that resonate for that industry. She found a very similar sort of mission in sort of what I want to do next. And as that connection happened, I came on board with PlanGrid, and that's how I really got into the construction technology space.
Interesting. Yeah, love hearing that. So Autodesk has stated their commitment to making collaboration simple and helping AEC teams remain resilient, especially during this year. So during AE, you guys rolled out several new product lines going into the space. Wondering if you can share with the listeners, what they are and what you guys are up to with Autodesk.
Absolutely. One of the big themes for us, and this is something that we first unveiled, not this AU, but the AU of last year, is this idea of connected construction. Again, our belief is that in order for technology to really have an impact on the construction industry, whether it's in terms of improving efficiency or removing rework or improving the ability to create more sustainable construction, connected construction is super critical. What we find in the industry is that a lot of the tools are sitting in a silo. The whole sort of data layer is completely fragmented, and that creates this fundamental challenge of keeping data in sync across multiple systems, creating duplicate entry, etc. Right? And when you analyze some of the root causes of what goes wrong within a construction project, it always comes down to the fact that you're working in siloed data that doesn't really talk to each other. You're working with workflows that don't really connect with each other. And so the big mission for us is really to deliver on this idea, this vision of connected construction. This is something that we talked about, not, like I said, not this AU, but the AU before that. And this year at AU, we really wanted to take that ball forward and really deliver the products that embody this concept of connected construction. So the products that we announced at Autodesk University, specifically Autodesk Build, Autodesk Quantify, and Autodesk BIM Collaborate, really deliver on that promise of connected construction by bringing together the best capabilities that we have within our portfolio, connecting them together in order to enable seamless data flow between all of these components in a cohesive user experience. And that's really sort of the crux of what we announced at AU.
Interesting. So how are you guys able to kind of better leverage that data to allow firms to achieve those better results? What does that workflow really look like?
Yeah, sure. And before we sort of talk about some of those workflows, the first thing to emphasize is that the data needs to sit in a common data environment, right? And this is sort of the central place that is the hub of where data flows in and flows out of, right? And our common data environment is anchored by Autodesk docs. And so what does that mean? It means that when you are designing and you're using one of our authoring tools, whether it's Revit or it's, Plan 3D or Civil 3D, all of that data, all of those models that you create, all of the specs that you create, all of the drawings that you create, they flow into this common data environment. And from there on, the common data environment becomes a space that allows all the organizations to collaborate. So as a design firm, you may be creating this design, putting it into this common data environment. And again, you don't have to do that sort of manually. It's already fused into our authoring tool. So as you save that information, it's sitting in the common data environment. That creates this collaboration space where other organizations come in. Now you can start doing very sophisticated things like automatic clash detection. And as you detect those clashes automatically, they can turn into issues automatically, right, based on certain policies. And those issues show up not only in the cloud environment that we have, but also in the same authoring tool. So that creates a connection. You no longer have to create issues in one place and duplicate another place and keep data manually synchronized. Now that same information, that same design information, as it goes through the approval process and is ready to be consumed on the job site for construction, you can go into that common data environment and publish from this common data environment that same information out into the field. So whether it's again specs, drawings, models, those can be easily published into the field. And as architects start revising that information, as new information comes to light and start revising those design, you can again very easily transmit that into the job site, so that the job site is always working from the latest information, right? They don't have to double guess whether the information that they're consuming is the right information. And as they start consuming that information, as they start again creating, let's say, issues, those issues can be consumed again in the office in the same environment and turned very easily into RFIs. And those RFIs can be turned very easily into potential change orders that can be sent to owners for approval. And as that approval comes in, that is transmitted very easily and again seamlessly into the job site, because everything is built on that same common data environment. Again, the emphasis out here is that entire workflow that I walked you through, in the past, you would use 4 different systems with its own data, and you'd have to manually move information in and out of these systems. And guess what happens? Invariably something falls through the crack, data gets out of sync, and before you know it, each part of your organization is working from a different view of the world, creating a lot of issues as the construction project progresses.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think the effect of, everything going on with COVID this year has really been on that workflow and the need for that connected construction?
Yeah, more so than ever, because you don't have the luxury anymore of being in the same physical location. You have to figure out ways to collaborate when you are not in that same physical location, which means that the premium on collaboration just got a lot more important. And you can effectively collaborate without knowing that the data that you're working on is the right data. And if you had to keep spending time keeping data synchronized, then collaboration just goes out of the door. The cost of collaboration becomes a lot higher. So especially in a COVID world, and even in the post-COVID world, the ability to collaborate when you're not in the same physical location, that is a problem that has to be solved for the construction industry. And you can do that if your data is sitting in siloed environments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I want to back up a minute. It's my understanding that these new offerings have really been kind of built from the ground up, and love for you to speak to how these products were built and what that process looks like for somebody like Autodesk.
Yeah. So, the good news is that although these solutions were built in order to facilitate seamless collaboration, seamless data flow from the grounds up, we actually have all of the technology within our overall product portfolio. So, if you had to rebuild all of that, existing capabilities that we have, whether on the
Hmm.
BIM 360 side or on the PlanGrid side, or many of other product lines like, Assemble or Building Connected, we would have spent many years, probably half a decade, rebuilding all of those capabilities.
Hmm.
And so one of the more strategic decisions we made is that we didn't want to rebuild any of those capabilities. We actually wanted to just bring that together in a common framework, based on this common data environment. So what we did build is this common data environment and a framework. And in that framework, we started plugging in the best in class capabilities from our existing products and then connecting them up together in a cohesive experience. And so, that gave us, a couple of advantages. One is like, the advantage of speed. Like I said, we were able to kind of do that in very short order, as opposed to, spending multiple years doing that. More importantly,
Hmm.
for our customers, that has a critical benefit, which is they've spent a lot of time training their teams on various tools. They've trained them on BIM 360, some of them have trained them on PlanGrid. Because we are bringing these systems together, there is a sense of familiarity. So even though we announced, Autodesk Build and Autodesk Quantify and BIM Collaborate, when you actually look at those products, there is a sense of familiarity in terms of the workflows that they support, because it's built using the existing componentry that comes with BIM 360 with PlanGrid. And so, with that familiarity, it's a lot easier for those companies to adopt those products. And so that part, was not built from scratch, but by leveraging existing capabilities. And then lastly, as we continue to improve that componentry in BIM 360 and PlanGrid, our partners, our customers that are using the new solutions we announce get the full benefit of those investments we make in those existing componentry, because those are the components that power our unified solution.
Hmm. Interesting. So how will all these new offerings really allow for that better leveraging of just the vast amounts of data in that a construction project generates? And what does
Yeah.
that really mean then for the industry at large?
Yeah, of course. So, we talked a little bit about connected construction, but the other part of having that vast amount of data is that data makes you a lot more intelligent, right? That data allows you to look at deep insights. So as that data comes together, you can really start to look at data from different angles. And that deep insight can be turned into action in order to understand what is your risk. As this information comes up, our algorithms analyze that information for our customers in real time and really
Hmm.
start highlighting risk factors. It's almost like having a crystal ball that allows you to sort of look at a little bit in the future to understand where there are risk factors, whether risk factors or design risk factors or quality risk factors, so you can mitigate those risks before it becomes a much larger issue, right?
Hmm.
So that's one big advantage of really tapping into that vast amount of information that companies have. And then the second part of is that, again, tapping into that information allows you to start looking for ways in which you can automate your processes. Again, using tools like machine learning and AI, you can start automating aspects of your workflow, so that you don't have to spend time doing manual tedious work. You could spend that same energy doing other things that add a lot more impact, a lot more value, right?
Hmm.
And so that's the other part that we will start helping our customers start leveraging that deep sort of pool of data that they have in order to start automating and improving their workflows. And then the third aspect of this is really that feedback loop. So as you start completing projects and as you start looking at what worked well, what didn't work well, you can start creating a feedback loop so that your next project can learn from those experiences and can be executed in an even better manner.
Hmm.
And the industry does that today, but more on an anecdotal manner, right? You tap into the
Hmm.
experiences that your GCs and your subcontractors, your foremen, your superintendents have. And as years go on, that experience becomes richer, and that's how projects that they work on get more robust, less risky. But you can
Yep.
start leveraging data in order to do that as well and create that feedback loop. So those are the three areas where we feel extremely excited about how our customers, our partners can start tapping into the data.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's great. One of the things that has been kind of mind-boggling me as of late is there's so much data going on in a project, and yet it seems like especially in the construction side, that we don't stop and take the time to really sift through that data after
Right.
the project, more than just the financial aspects of it. And so
Right.
how do you really take that to get smarter and better and faster and more efficient on the next project? And
Exactly.
instead of just, did we make a profit or did we not make a profit? There's so much more that you can pull from data.
Exactly. And thought it comes down to too much data sometimes is really hard to work with, right? So you want to analyze all of this data, but then surface things that are really actionable, right?
Sure.
And so how do you actually take this vast amount of information and really hone in on the information that is most relevant to a given persona at a given stage of the project? If you can answer that question, cohesively and comprehensively, you have really tapped into the power of data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think you can very easily for sure get lost in the sea of data. So, having those goals and what you're wanting to measure, that's huge for sure. So how does Autodesk build, quantify, and then BIM collaborate relate to the BIM 360 products?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, the Autodesk build, Autodesk quantify, BIM collaborate, they're really built using the same componentry that BIM 360 is built around. It's the exact same components, whether you're talking about the document management capabilities, the project management capabilities, the asset management capabilities. Those are the exact same components that BIM 360 uses. So a BIM 360 project, when you go into the BIM 360 project, you see all of these different components. When you go into an Autodesk build project, you see the exact same components. Now they have a slightly different look and feel because it's infused with additional componentry from PlanGrid, right? And when you combine those two components, you can now start creating new workflows, new doors open up. And so those new capabilities, for example, progress tracking is a brand new capability that's part of Autodesk Build that really we were able to provide a progress tracking module because we were able to combine the dynamic markup capabilities of PlanGrid with the rich document management capabilities that BIM 360 has. And so as we combine BIM 360 components and PlanGrid components, these new use cases become possible. But customers that are using BIM 360, they will find a sense of familiarity with Autodesk Build because it uses exactly the same components, slightly different look and feel, and in our belief, a much more intuitive look and feel as well.
Yeah, interesting. So what would you say is kind of one of the main kind of practical benefits of having all the data in one centralized location with this construction management platform?
Yeah, and what it creates really is this notion of a single source of truth, this idea of a single source of truth. And when we look at sort of that single source of truth concept, is the data that's sitting in our common data environment connected with the data that may not be sitting in our systems? Because if you look at any organization, they have and they will continue to deploy multiple systems. As long as the data, there's a golden thread that ties these data elements together and connects these data elements together in a manner such that when those data elements change, that change is propagated through the entire system, of course, in a controlled manner, in a manner that's in compliance with your business policies, with the right access permissions. If you can do that, you create this complete view and a single source of truth. Now, why that is really important is the first thing is that single source of truth really avoids, and again, when we say single source of truth, just by connecting the data in a static manner, it's not sufficient. It really has to be that dynamic so that changes are propagated. Now, if you're able to do that, then you don't have to double guess. You always know that you're working with information that is the right information you need to work with. It's the latest information, is the information that's been approved for your usage, and shortens the entire loop in terms of taking action. So you don't have to wait for information to come in and then go hit multiple systems and get uploaded and get synchronized. You don't have to make phone calls and emails just to know whether you're working off the right information. So that's one big advantage of a single source of truth, that you are rest assured that you're working off the right information. The second part of this is that as the project progresses, that data becomes richer and richer and richer. And we talked a little bit about predictive insight. So as that data becomes richer, your ability to assess risk becomes even better. And none of this would be possible, again, if you didn't have that single source of truth. And then lastly, as you are ready to start handing over the information that you've collected through the life cycle of the project into operations, you really need that single source of truth. Without that single source of truth, trying to compile all of these pieces of information to hand over to your owner is just, not only is it a nightmare, but it's practically impossible. Things invariably drop through the cracks, and then that has ramifications down the road when you start operating these assets. And so, that again, in order to create a good handover package, you need to have that single source of truth.
Yeah, interesting. So, you mentioned earlier that the construction industry has kind of the reputation of being the resistant to technology change. What would you say to encourage those that are using the line of, oh, well, what we've always done is working, so why do we need to change?
Yeah, and we hear that a lot, and sometimes, and it's unfortunate, but what the pandemic has taught us is that you need to be prepared. What continue to work may not necessarily continue to work when the circumstances change.
Sure.
As sort of the workforce, as new entrants come into the workforce, we've all grown up in the last 20, 25 years in a digital age, and they want to bring that same digital first mindset into their workspace. And so the industry has to evolve to cater for that. It has to evolve in order to be more resilient to things that may change around us, things that may be out of control, out of our control. And over again, technology has shown that it provides the ability to deal with these very fast-paced changes and provide a competitive advantage. So for partners of ours who say, well, this has always worked, why change something that has always worked? And that's fair. But when circumstances change, you need to be able to adapt to those changed circumstances. When the speed of doing things is much faster than it used to be before, you need to adapt to those changes. And you need to adapt not only for your competitive advantage, but because that may be your only choice. Without adapting, you may not be able to deal with the ever-changing world around you.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And those firms and contractors that are able to crack the code on the data that we were talking about earlier, they're really able to do that and fully see all those benefits. They're going to leave all those other people way far in the dust that are stuck in the, well, we've always done this mentality.
Yeah, and without that, ideas like lean construction or process re-engineering to create more efficiency, to create more sustainable construction, it's really hard to do that using the same sort of methodologies that may have worked for you up until now. The outcomes are changing, right? And for the outcomes to change, some of the processes you use, some of the tools that you use, some of the methodologies that you use, they have to change.
Yeah, definitely. So let's kind of dive back into the leveraging the data aspect of it. You guys also rolled out the Autodesk Tandem as part of AU. So if you could kind of unpack what is that, and then how are you connecting the digital world with the real world through Tandem?
Yeah. So, in a nutshell, Tandem is really the representation of what happens in the physical world, right? Now, we talked a little bit about the handover process and, making sure that single source of truth is comprehensive enough so that it can be handed over for downstream services like operation. Well, the idea is that, if you have that comprehensive data set in single source of truth, it then enters our digital twin, our Tandem system, and that's how that information gets bootstrapped. Now, it's not just a static piece of information. Yes, that's your current representation, a digital representation of your current asset. But these assets, they have a life of their own. They evolve. Things change. Your needs change. Again, take the example of the pandemic. Offices around the world are completely reconfiguring their office space. To meet the new needs in a post-pandemic world. They're questioning. Is the office space supposed to work exactly like it used to work before? Is the work that's going to happen in the office space going to be exactly the same? And the answer is no. It's going to be different. So they need to reconfigure. Now, as they're reconfiguring it, in a world that does not have a digital replica, imagine the overhead in keeping everything up to date in order to understand how these things have evolved, right? So that your
Mhm.
downstream projects can be done with the right information, right?
Mhm.
And so what digital twin really allows us to do is to not only take the asset at the point of turnover, but allows us to keep that updated as these changes happen in the physical world. And we're working with partners who have very fascinating technology in order to understand the reality in the physical space and then reflect that in our Tandem environment, uh, built on top of this common source of truth that we've handed over to the Tandem environment. So
Mhm.
it really is sort of that real-time replica in digital space of what's happening in the physical space. And a big way in which we do that is through deep integration with third-party systems to constantly feed us that information so that we can have a truly accurate replica of what's happening in the physical space, have that replica in the digital space.
Yeah. So you were just talking about it there some, but wonder if you could dive a little bit more into it on how, why is it important to take the data generated throughout the entire project lifecycle and then hand that over to the owners for the operations and have it in a streamlined and useful way?
Yeah. So if you take the commissioning process, right? There may be a piece of equipment that has gone through a safety check and its quality checks as part of the commissioning process, right? Now, part of those safety checks have a requirement on what needs to happen operationally downstream for that equipment for it to continue working at that same level of safety and quality, right?
Mhm.
That information usually comes from multiple different sources, right? It comes from the submittal logs that you've created. There are certain criteria that you need to satisfy. It comes in through the actual submittals that vendors may have submitted around it, right? It comes through certain regulatory requirements that you have to satisfy. It comes through the checklist that you went through in order to understand what is the exact configuration that you've set up for that piece of equipment. If any one of that piece of information is missing, when it comes to operation, in the best case, you're scrambling around to find what the information was and spend countless hours trying to do that. In the worst case, you may make completely strong assumptions and deteriorate the quality and worst case the safety of that piece of equipment, which has
Mhm.
much bigger ramifications downstream. And
Mhm.
so that's sort of an example of how, without the idea of that connected data, without the idea of that comprehensive, single source of truth of data, your downstream workflows become not only inefficient, but outright dangerous in many cases.
Yeah. So why do you think this connection point hasn't been done already, or the owners haven't really started just demanding it?
Yeah, I think for various reasons. Again, a big part of that is that the evolution of the industry from being a largely analog based industry to a digital
Mhm.
based industry, you had to make that transition. And that transition has been happening over the last decade or so. And now we're sort of at that critical mass
Mhm.
where enough of the workflows, enough of the information that's generated during the construction process is in a digital form. So that's one of the prerequisites. And we hadn't hit that inflection point up until maybe last or this year, right? Now
Mhm.
that we've hit that inflection point, some of these downstream workflows are possible. The second part of that is that even as things were getting digitized, as I mentioned, they were getting digitized in silos. Without connecting these data sets, even though you had the data, even though it was in a digital form, because they were not connected, it became
Right.
less useful downstream. And so that's sort of the second criteria that we are trying to sort of put in place is, yes, first let's go from analog to digital. Great, we've done that. That's check number one. But now that we're digital, let's make sure that all of these data sets are connected so that you can actually make use of it downstream. And that's the journey that we're on right now. And as we sort of continue to roll out our solutions, we think it's going to really accelerate the adoption of some of these services like digital twin, like Tandem.
Mhm. Interesting. So if we're talking to owners right now, what's the impact on the bottom line for them?
Overall, there's various ways to look at sort of the impact. The first thing is that just during the construction process, at the end of the day, if there is a cost overrun, if there is a schedule overrun, it really is the owner that is the most impacted. And
Mhm.
so as we deploy connected construction, as we bring really this power of connected data and a single source of truth, it really has a direct impact on the actual execution of the construction project, which has a direct impact on cost and quality, right? Not only that, but when you come to start operating, it may take several years to complete the construction of an asset, but the operation of that asset is much longer than the time it took to construct, right? It may take 2-3 years to construct a building, but that building is in operation for 25, 30, 40 years, right? And if you don't have the right tools in place, or the right process in place, or the right data in place, the operating cost of that asset gets magnified. And that's another sort of long-term impact that owners feel as they start operating these assets in the event of poor data.
Interesting. So if we flash forward to next AU, what would you like to kind of announce as far as the trends looking back over the year 2021 of where the industry has moved in really leveraging data?
Yeah, at next AU, if we are able to say that we've gone from a world where we have the most comprehensive platform in the construction industry to a world where we have the most connected and the most intelligent platform, in addition to the most comprehensive platform for the construction industry, that is being embraced, adopted, deployed by a vast amount of the industry. I think we would have really sort of delivered on our mission. And so I'm really eager, and I'm very confident that just given the sheer feedback we get from our customers from last AU, the work that my team's been doing, I feel extremely bullish that come next AU we'll be able to make that statement, and we'll have an overwhelming number of customers coming and making that statement on our behalf, and really sharing their experiences on how connected construction has really improved their business, really improved how they work, really improve the satisfaction of their customers and the satisfaction of their employees. Let's not forget that their employees who come in and put in that effort day in, day out are an important constituent in this whole equation. And if you can improve their satisfaction, the output of what they create will also resonate with their customers. So I'm hopeful that as we bring this concept of connected construction and the seamless flow of data, our customers, their customers, and our customers' employees will all be able to really talk to the benefit of rolling out some of these tools.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So how do people find out more about all the different products that got announced at AU?
Yeah, there's a fair amount of material on the Autodesk website. Definitely go check it out over there. Autodesk University, all the sessions are recorded, available for mass consumption. There's over 700 classes. As one of our colleagues pointed out, that it is probably 6 months of information that can be consumed over there. So definitely encourage all of you to check out the resources, both on our website, as well as partake the recordings of all the classes that we ran at Autodesk University. That'll give you a full flavor of all the good work that has gone in over the last year, and where we're headed over the coming years.
Yeah, awesome. There's a whole bunch of really good information. I was able to attend a few of the classes, and there's so many more that I had bookmarked that it'll take me my 6 months. So it's a good timeline for me then. So last question that I ask my guests is what does innovation mean to you?
Innovation for me it's really the ability to connect some dots in order to create something that was either not possible in the past, what people thought was impossible in the past. If we can connect the dots and bring about a change that was previously thought either impossible or not even thought of, to me, that really sort of hits that innovation nerve.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll end it there. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Samir. Really appreciate it.
Likewise, Todd, thanks again for having me, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.